Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today it is a great pleasure to introduce you to Simone Martinelli from Volume. Simone, how are you?
I'm doing well, Toby. Thank you.
Listen, it's another great startup founder with another great story that I'm really happy to share with everyone today. Simone, we've got loads to unpack. There's loads of interesting things we're going to be talking about. I think you're in one of the hottest areas at the moment of global fintech. So I'm excited to share everything that you're doing, the backstory to it all, how it all started, your sort of journey from product manager to founder, everything in between. But before we do all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your journey, and what led you to starting up Volume.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
The journey started many years ago, as you can spot. Originally from Italy, moved to the UK 8 years ago. Passionate about technology. I ended up in fintech in 2014 in the early days where Revolut were just a small company of 3 people. I've always been fascinated about the fintech industry, being across Bitcoin startup and large card scheme like MasterCard and Visa and money transfer. I decided to start my own business 7 months ago, and it's been a wild ride so far.
Congratulations, yeah, that sort of journey, as you say, there's some real pedigree to the companies you guys have worked in the past, and now it's sort of moving into something there which is really exciting. That you mentioned when you first came over about Revolut being a 3-man company, and looking where they are now. I think it's probably a similar journey and trajectory that you guys are lining up for yourselves. So tell us a little bit about Volume. Where did Volume come into it? You started up, as you say, last year. Good journey so far, a bit of a roller coaster and lots of excitement in between it. Tell us where you are now and what you guys are doing.
Yes, of course. So we started Volume because we were personally frustrated by the experience when we were buying things online in e-commerce or website. There are this checkout full of friction where online shopper like all of us need to provide email, password, name, surname, and the password. Am I the only one who forget the password all the time? It's pretty terrible. And we were like, we actually have the position and the skills and the knowledge to fix this problem for the entire internet population.
Yeah, and that's a population which has been frustrated for quite some time, and we've seen lots of different things that sort of come up. Why I said it was so hot at the moment is that everyone has been aware of the sort of recent spat between Amazon and Visa. Big news, very public news, very public war that's happened all the way through. Companies of e-commerce size haven't been able to threaten or change the landscape a little bit recently, and we've seen noise there which has pushed it to the brink. Tell us where Volume come in and what sort of problem you're solving.
Yes, definitely. The battle between Amazon and Visa, with Amazon threatening Visa to shut down the entire Visa card on their website, happening on a public stage, it works as a ring bell for the entire e-commerce industry. Back in the days, the only option to accept payments for merchants were cards. Essentially, you needed cards, maybe with PayPal, and you were covering 100% of the payment methods available in a country. Now, with open banking regulation, there are actually viable alternatives that helps merchants to accept payments from their customer conveniently, quickly, and more transparently. And that's where we come in. We help merchants to reduce their cost of accepting payments and increase their conversion rate at the checkout. Essentially, they spend less and they sell more.
Which is not a bad position to be in for the merchants. I think what's interesting sometimes is that there's been, as has been widely publicised, and I know you've sort of had this conversation in the past as well, a lot of debate around a number of different companies coming in there to disrupt the card payment industry. We know it's not been ideal for a long time. And those companies have quite often sided with the e-commerce business, as opposed to sort of really getting the faith, trust, and the movement that's necessary of multiple thousands and hundreds of thousands of people on the consumer side sort of adopting to it as well. I know this is something you've thought of and you can see, and there's benefits to both. How do How do you bridge that gap to give yourself and the investors and everyone who's involved in this the confidence that this is going to be something there which genuinely disrupts a space that is ripe? We're waiting and waiting for this to sort of really take off, aren't we? And Volume look to be very well positioned to do that. But what gives where's the confidence come from, and how do you sort of address that merchants and consumers rather than merchants or consumers, or here's a consumer business, here's a merchant business? How's it great for everyone?
So that's a very good question, Toby. And the secret sauce is that we truly are a B2B2C company, because we are fully aware that we sell to businesses, but ultimately our product is used by online shoppers or people like us. That's also reflected on the team structure. I spent and my co-founder, Christoph, we spent a number of years developing business product when I was on MasterCard, for instance, selling solution to merchants. But then in More Dream It, we were actually selling to online shopper. So we merge this expertise and the passion that we have to solve this problem to create a solution that never existed.
Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant position to be in, and I think it probably comes a little bit back from the sort of background that you find yourselves in there. I've said this, I've been fascinated by this, the sort of changing face of founder of fintech businesses. From probably it being the bastion of developers and techies a few years ago to say, right, we've got it, here's a new product we've invented and we want to take it to marketplace. And maybe they struggled a little bit, with the ability to articulate and sell that and solve the actual problem. Then we sort of saw this ex institutional founder come through. So people who've been in banks and large institutions who are coming out then and providing solutions to it. And now actually what I think we've seen more than anything, and I'm fascinated by this over the course of the last 18 months, is more and more people come through from product management backgrounds who've been working in those larger organizations, seeing these sort of issues, dealing with these sort of issues and saying, do you know what, here's my idea, and starting up themselves. It seems that there's a pathway from product manager to founder these days. Tell us why.
The explanation is quite simple, because what I truly believe is that being a product manager is the closest thing you can do to train you to be as a tech entrepreneur. Yeah. You've been thrown a variety of challenges, and you need to deal with engineers to develop a solution to make the client happy. So you are at the core of the business, and you got also the pressure to deliver results and move the metric. So it's a good training. I'm not saying that we are better than the previous founders, but definitely the career in product management enable you to face challenges that are quite similar to starting a business from scratch.
There's certainly a trend of some really successful people who've come through recently and managed to gain that traction, because I think by dealing with everything on a much more formulaic basis, and as you say, that there is a lot of similarities between that sort of way of thinking about how you take a product to marketplace and what you have to do as a founder to be able to to do that. Tell me some of the things that you've learned though in your new role. I mean, it's coming up to a year now. You've been building up a business from scratch. It's the first time you moved into that sort of world. If you could sort of go back now to, what is it, 8 months ago, 9 months ago?
8 months ago.
And have that same conversation with Simone back in the middle of 2021. What's the conversation you're having? What sort of tips are you going to say, this is something I've learned now that I didn't know as a product manager?
So there was no training for raising money from institutional investor, which I would have really appreciated. But we just go with the flow and learn quickly, iterate and improve. I think that's something that it's a real big challenge for everybody starting a business. It's very competitive. There are a lot of money in the UK because of the fintech scene, and it started to look like what Silicon Valley was in 1994. But that doesn't mean it's easy to raise money. There is a lot of competition, a lot of talented people, a lot of brilliant idea. We were lucky. We were very lucky to have an oversubscribed round that would be announced in the couple of weeks ahead. But definitely that was a challenge that we had to learn on the fly how to fix it.
Well, do you know what? I think it's amazing how many people say we were lucky that I speak to on in this show, and I think it's very rarely luck. That if we look back at what investors are looking for, is there a team there with a good track record? And you look at the background and CVs of you and your co-founders, and it's a pretty compelling track record. The second thing is there a marketplace that's got the scale and the scope to to be invested into? Is this something there which is a short-term winner? Is there something here which is going to be a sizable market? Is there and the third thing is there a need? Is this something which has got not just an international scale, and we'll talk about that in a second, but is this something there which is causing enough problem to be a solution which they say, yeah, actually that's something which we can sort out from there. So I think if you look at that story and you put yourself into those three things, and obviously there's more that investors will look at within it, is there appetite for this for this marketplaces and these sign of sales, etc., etc. But you look at those particular starting points. There's not too much luck behind that. That's a really well thought out and designed process to allow you to put yourself in the shop window. So it's no surprise to me that sort of investment and backing comes to you when you've got that sort of structure to it.
I have to admit, we might be in a privileged position because of our background and the problem that we're solving here, but still doesn't make it easy. Still you get asked the question is why Google cannot develop this, why Stripe can't develop this. So surely we had good pillars to rely on, but that doesn't guarantee a successful race.
So talk to me once those questions are asked and you're faced with all of that. What's given people the confidence to come in there and say that this is a business which is the one to back?
At the end of our round, and having pitched to more than 100 venture capitalists and angel investors in fintech, my feeling is that the most appreciated variable is the founder's conviction. So how much you believe it can happen, how much you believe you can actually disrupt an entire industry. What are you willing to sacrifice to reach the goal? And I completely agree.
Do you know what? I think there's it's a perfect name for a book, that, isn't it? The Founder's Conviction. You can imagine almost. I was just writing it down on the page here in front of me, because it's the perfect strapline for what you're talking about, isn't it? I think that comes down, and you've brilliantly articulated it there in a one-off sentence. If you're looking to give a playbook for someone who's looking to raise, that conviction is so important. It's not just right, this is a problem and this is how we're going to solve it. This is a problem that needs solving, and this is why we can deal with it and where we can bring through. And I think that brings people along that journey alongside it as well. Tell me about you. I mean, and by all means, if this is inappropriate, don't worry about it. But when you're looking at the sort of people who you bring into it, who you're choosing to be your partners, your investors, there are people out there, I think, in the startup phase who just are looking for the money and take any money that comes into it. Were you looking strategically at who invested into you? Was there thought? You said you spoken to a number of different people. When you're oversubscribed, did you think then about who you invited into it? Is it have you got good partners at that seed stage for you?
Yes, it's a very good question. My recommendation is to not take money from everybody. We were lucky enough to have a oversubscribed round, so we went for the institutional investors that more share our culture in being bold, getting things done, and making an impact. There are some investors that bring funds, and there are other investors that bring funds and operational help. How to drive your communication strategy, how to drive your PR strategy, how to hire talents in the UK and across Europe. And we went for investors that could offer both, not only funds, but also operational support to scale quickly. It's a very competitive space. So that's the choice that we made.
And I think it's interesting. I love the fact that that's decision making as well, because I think it's so important. I was saying to someone yesterday on the phone that AB and seed round, there's obviously an attrition rate that can be improved so much. And I think the one thing that I think moves it that so much further forward from everything else is that obviously a business plan that's sustainable, and people have thought through the procurement processes and time, debt scales, and all of the obvious things there. But if I look at it when money comes into all of this, the businesses there that have really thought about that partnership and thought about what that money means and thought about what where the connectivity is between between the money and the company, I think that's a real sign for success, a signal for success of businesses that can scale and move further forward as well. And I think that it's interesting what you were talking about there about the why and the where and what you want to do, because I've also read a little bit about the story, and I know that your ambitions over the course of this year is to scale. We talked about size of market being important beforehand. Fortunately, you're in a marketplace that's pretty much universal, right? So I understand that Europe and the States are on the roadmap. How do you decide what you do, and what do we expect to see from volume over the course of 2022 once this raise is done, and what comes next for you?
Yes, no, it's a good question. The ultimate goal for volume is to be the Stripe for open banking. So we will offer a solution for e-commerce business to accept payments quickly, conveniently, and transparently, and for online shopper to pay in a single click directly via their banking app. That comes, of course, with challenge of scaling across different countries, supporting every bank in the world, which is not an easy challenge. So we're targeting UK and Europe first, then moving to the US and rest of the world later.
That's amazing. And you spoke about the founder's conviction there, and there's a punchy claim there to be the Stripe of open banking, which I love, and I love that sort of ambition and energy and passion that's behind all of this, and clearly the mission that you guys are on. Tell me what drives that certainty that that you put loads into this. You're 8 months into a journey. There's some hard yards in front of you. There's some really exciting challenges, and there's something there which can accelerate really, really quickly. We're seeing hyper growth in so many companies at the moment, and I anticipate seeing that for at least the next 4 or 5 years in this space. Tell me what drives your founder's conviction.
There are mainly 3 aspects that we can think of. The first one is the open banking come into place as a new regulation, which open up an area that historically was only for MasterCard and Visa. If you were a merchant and you wanted to accept payments from your customer, we had to support cards in the last 10 years. And cards means MasterCard and Visa. But now with open banking, there is a viable option to actually disintermediate the big guys from the transaction flow. I mean, this is once in a lifetime opportunity, and that's the first one. That's how we build founders' conviction. The second one is we have a very strong team. Beyond myself and Chris, which both come from Fortune 50 and unicorn in the payment space, our first 5 hires come from e-commerce background, Monzo, Curve, Revolut, and top FinTech. We've been in the industry enough to know quite a number of people that like our mission and vision. They're excited to challenge the big guys and not afraid to challenge the big guys in the space and say, maybe we can make it, maybe not. We have definitely high conviction to do that.
I love that. And the third piece?
The third piece is around technology. So comparing what the technology that's been built on people like Stripe, ADN, that is something that was developed 7 years ago. And everybody in the industry knows that there is technical debt, challenge, new code, and we are using the latest technology, React Native, Kotlin, and everything that has been pushed out in the last couple of years to make simple for e-commerce merchant to integrate with our solution. It's literally 5 lines of code.
That's amazing. So again, it comes back to us. This is such a blueprint, which I love looking at the patterns of all these sort of things. But if you look at those three things, market. So right time, once in a lifetime opportunity. I love the way you said that. The second piece then is team, and every investor is going to be looking at that quality and depth of team that you've got in there at that sort of stage. And the third piece there about tech, is it something there which is going to be able to drive things? And I think you're right. The level of technology at the moment just makes things that were previously been impossible possible in so many different ways and improve it. I'm interested in the response to this. I mean, you said there some of the questions that you've been challenged with and some of the things you've been batting back. I look at it and think, right, Visa is it's $1 billion organisation. It's the stalwart of everything. It's universally known, etc., etc. It's obviously not naive to the fact that there are advantages that they maybe are afforded and given at the moment. they're obviously also aware that there's a whole bunch of people who are snapping at the heels, wanting a piece of that £1 billion pie. How do they respond to this, and how do they let incumbents like yourself come through?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. What we've seen from incumbents like MasterCard and Visa is that they hold a entirely protection strategy. Very few new products actually coming out internally. Most of the strategy is acquiring young company, mid-stage company. The acquisition of Think by Visa a few months ago, it's an example. The acquisition of MasterCard of Vocaling, it's another example. There is a lot of M&A in payment compared to any other industry out there.
And is that the way you ultimately see yourselves growing, building, and then being acquired as to providing a better solution, or is it a journey there to go bigger and stronger and higher and better than that?
We haven't any particular exit strategy, at the moment. We definitely are enjoying the ride so far. So selling is not on the option.
Not on the option, yeah. We can't get knocks on the door just yet. Give you a couple of years. So with regards to the sort of next phase of this this international growth for you, is that done from domestically, or does it mean boots on the ground in Europe? Does it mean boots on the ground in America? Or is that there are really interesting challenges when you sort of go into that sort of phase of growth? Do you with such a broad marketplace, do you concentrate on being cementing yourself and then moving out and go, or there's the roll of the dice and just go big very quickly? Which sort of route do you take, and why?
So the route that we're taking at the moment is shifting from online to offline payment. So what we are looking at the moment, of course, is online transaction, and now we support e-commerce merchant. But in the roadmap, of course, there is the opportunity to catch also in-store. So you might be surprised, but when we did user research around the adoption of Apple Pay, we found some interesting problems that are faced from normal people like us when they pay with Apple Pay. Am I the only one who is struggling to double click and my face recognition doesn't come up because I have the mask on because of COVID? Even in that case, there are interesting challenges to solve.
Well, it's not even with that, isn't it? The double click's annoying full stop, I think, as far as I'm concerned. So,
I can tell you more. If you save more than one card, actually shifting between one card and the other is not the most frictionless user experience you can think about.
Yeah, I love that. I love this. I love the fact of just seeing these everyday problems and actually saying, look, this is something which we can do and sort with it. So look, you've spoken a little bit about the sort of lessons you'd say that you've learned over the since you moved from the product management side and everything that built you up to be transferable over to founders, and a couple of things you'd say to yourself at the start of it as well. Tell me about things there who maybe haven't come from a product background, but someone who's a starter. If you were to give a couple of bits of advice or a golden nugget of advice for someone starting a business in the financial technology space, what would you be passing on?
Don't start.
certainly not in your world.
So no, it's gonna be a wild ride. You need to have really high conviction in what you do, what you believe is the future looking like. But regardless, like the money, the possibility of selling the company and becoming the next billionaire, I think what is really priceless is the journey. Transforming an idea, a belief, into an actually valuable product that millions of users and thousands of merchants are using on a daily basis.
Mission led. Yeah, I love that. And tell me, if you think about your career, and as you say, you've worked from in some really interesting businesses in the past. What's the best bit of advice you've been given?
Keep trying. I think that's the best advice that I've been given. If you want, you can, and it seems naive. I totally get it, but it's ultimately, it's not being the smartest person in the room that will lead to success. Is the most highly determined person will actually make it. I think there is a common belief where these founders are super smart, super intelligent, and they have a fantastic view of the market. And the reality is actually that we just don't take no for an answer. So you keep trying until you succeeded.
There's a quote I love using, which is genius is often just persistence in disguise. And I think you probably encapsulated it, that in what you said beforehand. And in terms of the market, looking at, we know where you guys are heading, and we know what's happening. You're a sort of self-confessed fan and student of the financial technology fintech space. What if we look at 2022 now, starting at the you can't believe it's nearly Q1, end of Q1 already, but we're sat there and we're eating into 2022 already. What do you think some of the key themes will be? Where would you put your money on key themes being this year?
I would put money on crypto. I truly believe after a few years where crypto were primarily the trading assets with a really low adoption in terms of their traditional use case as a payment currency, the adoption of crypto is not that far as we thought it could have been 2 or 3 years ago.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask one last sort of quick fire question round piece. And as you see behind me, I love a good book around entrepreneurship and technology in the space and everything in between it. If you could give one good advice on be it a book or a podcast or a film or anything like that you've seen, which you think like there's things there which you can take away that you'd pass on to anyone watching this, what should they be reading, listening to, or seeing?
The Lean Startup, Eric Rice. Traditional class, and it's a classic, but
it is a classic, for a reason.
Classic. Right? For a reason, this is a classic, right? I think that's probably the best piece of advice you can find in that book.
Good man, good man. Okay, listen, Simone, it's been wonderful talking to you, and it's a really interesting space you're in. It's a really interesting thing you're doing. I'm sure there's going to be people out there who are sort of nodding away with what you're talking about and recognizing some of the issues that were there. You're obviously going to be expanding the business. You're going to be doing some interesting things. Who should be talking to you at the moment? Who should be reaching out and speaking to Volume? Who can you help? And how should they get in touch with you?
Anybody who likes the sound of our mission and vision, and e-commerce merchants that want to reduce the cost of accepting payments.
Sounds good. And the best way for them to do that?
Websites. There is a direct chat that comes straight into my phone.
There we go. So I know how to get hold of you now. I know how to get hold of you now. Simone, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the show. Thanks so much for sharing everything. I love the stories of all this. It's been a real privilege for me over the last couple of years to speak to so many people who are doing cool things. I love yours. I love the genuine mission-led vision that you're on at the moment. It's a great story. I'm really excited to track it over the course of the next year or two. And I wish you nothing but other than massive success. Simone, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.